All right, it is time to continue the end of the year content by going over all the series that I finished this year. I have finished 11 series, and I'm going to bring up 2 others that I caught up to and I feel like were notable enough that I want to talk about them. But so 13 series total. We're going to talk about if I have videos where I go in more in depth. I will point you to those, and it's part of the end of the year content, so that playlist will also be in the description. And this is going to be a whole retrospective of them. So we're going to talk about first things that are really disappointing. We'll talk about things that were just fine, and we'll talk about favorites. But first, starting with the 2 that are technically not finished, but I wanted to bring them up. Firstly, I caught up with the Red Rising Saga this year. So I read Lightbringer, which was really fun. One day, Leanna will finish that book, and we might talk about it. But in the meantime, I do have a Should You Read for all 6 of the books that are out in that series. And for me, especially in the newest part, favorite book. Favorite book in the newest part. I don't know if it's my favorite of the 6. That might still be Morningstar. Unsure. But man, if you're someone who likes both series but like have different things that have strengths, this one's kind of the perfect, like, I don't know, it makes you feel so good, but also so sad. And if you read Red Rising, that's what you want, right? Like, you want the emotional roller coaster, and that's what Lightbringer brings to the table. And I would really like the last book, but this one at least, I feel like I'm in an okay-ish resting point versus Dark Age just wore me out. Dark Age is still my least favorite, even on reread, but it feels a bit better having read Lightbringer. Like, I think the name is apt. Other one I want to bring up is the Signus Verse by Karen Lord. I have an interview with this author. She's lovely, one of my highlights of the year, and I have a Should You Read for the 3 books in this universe. They are interconnected. You should read them in publication order, which is why I think of them as a series, but it's not your traditional trilogy, and I go into that at length in that video. But the newest book came out, The Blue Beautiful World, this year, and it was really fun. I had a really good time with it. I was so happy to be back in the world, and one day further along the line, there's going to be another book in this series, which is why I know it's not completed, but it's completed for the foreseeable future, and each book contains its own story, so you never feel like you need the next book. There's like one arc that I need to finish, that I need to see how this character does. But it was a lovely time, one of my favorite authors, so always a blast to read a book in a favorite series by a favorite author. So yeah, with those notable faves but technically not finished series out of the way, let's get into some of my disappointments, starting with, I guess, probably disappointments that were not surprising, but still I was like, really? So in 2 of these, I chose to read a bunch of young adult series this year for my Goodreads Choice Award project. And these were a lot of young adult series that I missed. Like, they came out near the end of my college years or right when I went to grad school, so I didn't pick them up because I wasn't reading as much or I had pivoted far away from young adult at the time. I wasn't on the bookish internet, so I wasn't walking those hallways, and I didn't pick up those books. So that meant I read Folk of the Air. I wanted to like this, guys. I really did. But boy, it was not it. Was not it. Did not enjoy this. I was just bored. I was so bored. These books are not long, but they felt like the longest books in the world. And I love a good toxic relationship in a young adult book. I mean, I'm not here to say they aren't fun. This enemies to lovers thing was so boring. No chemistry, no tension. It was not my thing. So that was just really disappointing because I just expected to have fun with it. I just wanted a fun brain candy time, not to be bored to tears. The other one is kind of similar just because I was having such a good time, and that's like, this was fine. Like, this really wasn't a bad series. It's probably closer to like my average tier that we'll talk about next, but this is Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. This is a fan favorite trilogy. People love this trilogy. And I think a couple things happened. I was reading the main 6 Shadowhunter books, and when the 4 through 6 came out, they're published at the same time as the Infernal Devices, and you really kind of need to read them in publication order to not spoil yourself. Shocking, I guess. And so I kind of spoiled myself for Endgame of Infernal Devices, even though it's kind of obvious. So a lot of the emotional moments just didn't have the same weight. And I also just didn't love these characters, I think, as much as everyone else does. I think they were fine, but that's where it was for me. It was just fine. And I was a little disappointed after having such a surprisingly fun time with the Shadowhunter series that I read, like, at the end of last year. That won't be on this list. I read those main 6 in December of 2023 when 2022. Oh, time. When no one was watching me, so. But I read Infernal Devices in January, and it was fine, but I was hoping to really love it. So I was a smidge disappointed. Another one that really disappointed me was the Drowning Emperor series. I have a should you read for this. I read the first book. And I liked it, but I didn't love it, and it was getting a lot of hype when it came out. And I was just like, okay, I don't see it, but it's not bad, so I'll read the next book. And then I really liked the second book. I think it was Bone Shard Emperor is the second book, and I had so much fun with that, to the point where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm excited for Bone Shard War, let's go. And then Bone Shard War, just like, no. One of the things I had liked about the first two books is it's tightly paced. It's like, especially for a debut, really tightly paced, and I thought kept the momentum going in a really good way, especially for a plot-driven, kind of plot-twisty, world-building narrative, like that was the focus. Where did that go in Bone Shard War? I don't know, and I do think the issue was we shifted our antagonistic focus, and it was not for the betterment of the story. I'm really annoyed because there were some interesting things we were talking about, and we stopped talking about those interesting things to go look at a mustache-twirling villain who I didn't care about, and it led to a lot of fetch questing that was not fun, and it was disappointing. It was too long, and I should have DNF'd it, and I would have DNF'd the series if I hadn't liked the second book, but I really liked the second book, so I was just bummed. Really bummed. So yeah, and the next one, it's not like as sad, but like I really wanted to like it, and this was the Rainwild Chronicles by Robin Hobb. It's too long. Even though this is like technically the shortest part of Realm of the Elderling, it's too repetitive. Let me put it that way. It could have been this long if we didn't need to keep recapping the previous book in the next book and keep rehashing the same thought cycles each character is having over and over again. Like, there were interesting things to continue to unpack and embellish upon, but we weren't embellishing, we were repeating. And it's just so weird because, especially, well, there's another series by Robin Hobb on this list that we're going to talk about, but like, I've read a lot of Robin Hobb. I know what she can do, and I don't know why this project compelled her. And I know there was things in publishing. They were like, we want 4 books instead of 3. I don't know why, but it didn't work. It just didn't work. And I was disappointed because although I got a lot of lore reveals I always want, I just anticipated more. The Rainwilds are so interesting. Now, that said, I still love some of the characters. There were definitely moments in the series that were great, but especially near the end, I was just like, all of this work, for that climax? Okay, like, it was fine. It was very fine. But the most disappointing for me is I finished The Wheel of Time. And I have a should you read for the entirety of The Wheel of Time. I have read all 15 books in that series. I've watched the first season of TV. I have not watched the second. I don't know. And here's the thing. At some point in the series, I knew it would only be like a 3.5-star series at most for me. So like, that's on me, and I continue on. But then I read Gathering Storm by Brandon Sanderson, right? And that's his installment. Oh, that book was so good. That is such a good entry. Probably one of the peak points for me in Wheel of Time. It's like, I like that one. I like book 7. I think I like book 3. Like, I think I tend to like the natural, like, either beginning or end points in certain mini arcs that are in Wheel of Time. But man, Gathering Storm was so strong. And then the other 2 books are so long, and they don't need to be that long. And they're so long that, like, you're fatigued out of your mind and nothing feels cathartic. And that book was too long. And then there are some things that are thrown in for like the mega fans, like, oh, remember this character from like 8 million books ago? And then we were still meeting new characters in Memory of Light. Like, what? Like, I'm sorry. No, book 14, climax of the story, I'm not meeting new people that get hundreds of pages. No, we've gone beyond the point of indulgent for me at that point. And like, they did a thing with one of the first villains, and it didn't feel satisfying to me, and I guess it's not super satisfying for most fans as well. But yeah, I was hoping to end on the same note that Gathering Storm gave me, especially since Brandon Sanderson's one of my favorite authors. Like, this was just too long. Also, like, there's this infamous chapter called The Battle or The Last Battle, and it's literally like not 10 hours before you speed it up on an audiobook. It's the length of a novel. Like a short novel, but it's the length of a novel. And it doesn't even finish the battle. Like, what? Nah, rude. Super rude. And there was no real reason then, right? Like, if you're gonna do that. Like, in my mind, it's like, well, then just split it into chunks. Like, gosh, what are you trying to do? But I was really disappointed in that. So those are, 5 I finished, and I think the only ones that I could have DNF'd was Drowning Empire, because the other ones I did for projects, so, like, it was worth it for the project. Rainwild is worth it because I definitely needed to be with those characters and be in that world to really get all the payoff for the rest of the series, so it didn't bother me. I mean, Wheel of Time, I should have DNF'd centuries ago. So, but not too bad. And so then for some of the average, I have like 3. Like, these were fine series. I'm glad I finished them. They're not like favorites of all time. They're super fine. Let's start with The Last Hour. So this is the series that's after Infernal Devices, and you definitely need to read it after Infernal Devices or else you will spoil Infernal Devices, because there are characters in that trilogy who are like, I don't know, the generation above the generation we're following in The Last Hours. And I think The Last Hours could have been like a solid 4-star series for me. I loved the first 2 books, the characters, the banter, the chemistry, the soap opera-ness of this relationship, and the miscommunication of it all. It was fun. It was eating up the drama. But the last book wraps up the drama, and then there's 200 pages left. And I don't care that much about a Cassandra Clare plot, at least not in the Shadowhunter world, because we have done variations on a theme on the same Shadowhunter plot over and over and over again. So I'm like, oh yay, we're in this wasteland again, wandering about. Oh yes, this character who's related to that character. Like, it's not exciting to me. I think on a TV show it would be way better because we could go faster, or there's shiny things for me to look at. So this was kind of a slog at the end, and I do remember endings more than I remember anything else in a series. So alas, it was not perfect, but it's not a disappointment because I truly did love the first 2 books. I think there's a multiple Cordelias I've read this year that I've really liked. There's a Cordelia in this one, and I really like her. One of my favorite protagonists that she's written, especially because, like, having read a lot of her works this year, to go from the first Shadowhunter protagonist to Cordelia, the absolute growth in going from such a boring wet blanket of a character to this. So cool. All right, and then another fine series for me was the Semiosis duology. I finished that up. The first book, Semiosis, is a really strong, fun, deductive, like, cultural exploration of, like, these people who leave Earth because Earth is not going to be inhabitable, go to this planet and have to learn how to survive on this planet, and they form an interesting symbiotic relationship with this plant. And it's very tense. Like, I don't think I would call it horror, but it's tense, and you're on the edge of your seat because you're just waiting for the shoe to drop. And it's really fascinating how the civilization evolves and how it handles problems. Like, if you like hopping in and out of time points in a civilization with these types of thought experiments, it's really good. And then the second book, Interference, is like 100 or so years later, and we continue the thought experiment, but more people from Earth show up. And you see where it goes from there. And I thought it was fine, but not nearly as strong as the first one. But still, like, worth reading. It just didn't stick with me as much. And then the last one that I thought was really fine and was definitely elevated because it was our Patreon live shows for the year, and that was enjoyable, but this is the Protectorate series. This is fun. This is really good, mid-weight sci-fi, action-packed. I would definitely actually, give it to someone who's like a fantasy reader, but trying to get into science fiction, because I think it has enough of the stuff you're used to in fantasy to be like, oh yeah, I get who these characters are and their archetypes and their tropes, but you also get some of the language that's in a sci-fi story, and it's really fun. Got a lot of fun twists and turns. Like, that first book, there are so many moments in that Discord group chat where we're just like, oh, what? Oh, what? Like, no. And that just kind of continues to varying degrees of success throughout the series. But it was fun. It was a really fun adventure, space opera, science fiction time. Not a favorite of all time. I never wanted to go out and buy the books, but fun enough that I do know I want to try out more by this author because it was super readable, really tight, like a good mid-weight series for me. And what I mean by mid-weight is, like, it's not just archetypal characters, there's more to them, but it's also not consuming my brain completely, so it's just easy to just read and enjoy and consume. But it also, mid-weight sometimes means it doesn't really stick with me. Like, it doesn't have the gravitas of, like, a Dandelion Dynasty or something like that. So those were all my, like, average. So now we are in fave territory, and we already talked about 2 of my faves with, like, Lightbringer and Signus Beta. But in addition to those, we have 1, 2, 3 faves, and shall I try to rank them? Okay, I will, just because number 3 is the easiest. And this is the Fitz and the Fool trilogy. I have finished the Realm of the Elderlings, guys. It has happened, and Fitz and the Fool is a really good ending point for Realm of the Elderlings. I hear rumors that we might be getting more books, and I mean, there are always characters in this world. The world still exists, so they can always be expanded on. But in terms of, like, Fitz, who has had 9 books, this is a fantastic ending point for his arc, his journey. Oh, so good. Like, the last 2 books in the trilogy are not perfect for me. They're like 4.5-star books. Like, they're just not as paced well for me and my taste as Fool's Assassin, which is the first book in this trilogy. But as a whole, super solid. Like, whoa. And I can see why when people finish it, they're like, oh, now I just want to read the first book again, because it's just really well thought out. It feels cathartic. So, yeah, definitely had to be in one of my top 3. And, like, wild. I started Wheel of Time and Realm of the Elderlings at the same time, fall of 2019. And so to finish them both this year, where do I go now? I mean, like, I know there's so many books. Like, there's always more books to pick up. But it's just, wow, to finish 2 heavy hitters this year. And with very different results. Because I think I read both of them, and I was feeling about the same about both when I was picking them up. Like, when I was reading Eye of the World and Farseer and stuff like that. But Robin Hobb has some of my favorite books of all time, and Wheel of Time, at its best, has a 4-star book, so a little different. And now, okay, this is a thing that happened. So if you watch my best books of 2023, people were like, where's this book? And I put it here because it was about the series as a whole that made it a favorite experience, not a book itself, and that's the Rook and the Rose trilogy. I have an interview with the authors, which made me really happy, and it's spoiler-free, and we just go into the world building, and it's such a fun time. And Labyrinth's Heart is a fantastic conclusion to this trilogy. If you like this first 2 books in the series, you will feel satisfied with the 3rd book. Now, for me, the 3rd book's not my favorite, which is kind of why it didn't feel like that 3rd book belonged on it, and I didn't want to put rereads on my favorites of the year, so that's why I'm talking about this series here. I love this trilogy. I have a should you read for it. Like I said, I talked to the author when my first arc was The Mask of Mirrors, and I have a spoiler-free review for that from like 3 years ago or something like that. This is my trope candy. I love these characters. I love the magic. I love the theming. I love how it still focuses on society and everything like that. And it was such a good time. And maybe some of my enjoyment got tampered a little bit by the fact that I read it in a really hard month for me, but it also still made me happy in that month that was like kind of a rough time. I'm excited to reread these one day. I have all the audiobooks. I finally have the 3rd book. If you see on my shelf, it took me forever to find a copy that was to my standard to purchase. So amazing. So yeah, if you have taste that's remotely aligned with mine, you have to treat yourself to The Mask of Mirrors. I've talked about it a lot, so I'm just gonna keep it moving. So the number 1 series of the year, this shouldn't be a surprise, is The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. Also interviewed him. He was my first author interview for Science Behind the Magic. And like, what can I was completely consumed by books 2 through 4 in the spring, early summer of this year. Wall of Storms is my favorite book of the year. And then I read back to back, like within 3 weeks, The Veiled Throne and Speaking Bones. Like, I read it as one book, and then I interviewed him. And when I finished Speaking Bones, the book hangover, I'm like, what do I do now? Like, what do I do with my life now that I've read that book? I don't even know. I was about to interview him the next day, and then I just watched a bunch of interviews he had with other people, because I'm just like, I need to know your thoughts now. I can't even wait. It's such a well-crafted thought experiment with characters' arcs that you are invested in, even though it's not your traditional close character work story. Like, you do get to be with characters enough that you get invested with them, but they're also not your traditional, like, protagonist-reader relationship, is I guess the best way I can put it. There's some distance there. But the thought experiment, its project, how it comes to fruition, it is art, it is cathartic, it is a great experience. I love that he chose the decisions that he made. Like, when you set up thought experiments, you can choose to make choices. You can choose to be like, well, what happens if I look at this sort of thing? And he does, and I think it's really interesting. Like, there's a section where you have to have different cultures coexist, and there's a fallout after a conflict, and the cultures have to decide how we will handle that. And I think the decision he chose to explore is a really healthy one to have in fiction for us to think about and imagine, because imagination is a step in thinking of a better way to believe and live and problem solve. Like, art is for consumption and enjoyment, but it's also to help make your brain do different things. So yeah, these are the series that I finished this year. Per usual, it was a pretty good year. I don't feel like there were too many things that I should have DNF'd that I didn't, but I am excited. Wheel of Time's off my table. Like, really, that was such a time. Anyways, if you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here. Also, if you heard something, Kieran, I think, probably just bit Ryan. He's been a little teething lately. But emoji to let me know you're here. A bone for Speaking Bones. Yeah, we'll just do that. Let me know what series you have finished this year. Any of these series that you're going to pick up because of my review, or not going to pick up because you're like, I know we don't agree on this, so I'm not going to. I'd love to see all that in the comments down below. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.